Africa stands as the world's poorest continent, with over 400 million people living in extreme poverty, surviving on less than $1.90 a day. There are, as always, a lot of factors to consider as to why this is the case. But recently, Daron Acemoglu and James Robinson from MIT have released a study explaining the surprising reasons behind Africa's long-standing economic struggles, despite massive amounts of natural endowments as well as incoming aid and charity work trying to improve the lives of people there. So the question is, why has Africa remained poor and what can be done to solve the problem? We'll see. Africa comprises 54 diverse nations, each with its own set of economic systems, governance structures, and opportunities. And according to the World Bank, the continent's economic performance varies widely across countries, with some nations experiencing some growth while others lag behind. While Africa boasts of vast mineral wealth such as 40% of the world's gold, up to 90% of its chromium and platinum, and the largest reserves of cobalt, diamonds, platinum, and uranium in the world, vast fertile lands, and a youthful population of over 1.3 billion, economic prosperity remains elusive for many nations. One of the reasons behind this is bad governance and political instability. A significant barrier to economic growth in Africa is political instability. Fragile governments and frequent political problems discourage long-term investments crucial for building productive industries and infrastructure. Also, the risk of sudden policy changes have discouraged businesses from setting up shop or expanding operations. According to the International Monetary Fund report, over 30% of African countries score below the 50th percentile in terms of government effectiveness and political stability. Furthermore, the corruption problem in the continent, which is second to none, diverts resources away from vital infrastructure projects and social programs. Transparency International's 2023 Corruption Perception Index reveals that over half of African countries score below 50, indicating serious corruption issues. This lack of transparency discourages foreign investment and limits domestic entrepreneurship, costing African economies an estimated $148 billion per year. This is no doubt a staggering sum that could be used to fund vital development projects. Another major factor contributing to Africa's long-standing poverty is the limited infrastructure. Africa faces a significant infrastructure deficit, such as poor roads, unreliable power grids, and poor sanitation systems. This has created major bottlenecks for businesses across the continent. For example, the World Bank estimates that sub-Saharan Africa alone needs an annual investment of $100 billion in infrastructure to meet its development goals. This is because the lack of infrastructure hinders the movement of goods and increases production costs by as much as 30%, further discouraging foreign investment. Now, imagine trying to run a factory with frequent power outages or transport raw materials across unmaintained roads. That's exactly what it is like doing business in Africa. Furthermore, the current global trade landscape presents additional challenges to the economic situation in Africa. The truth is, Africa's economies often rely heavily on the export of raw materials like minerals and agricultural products. Unfortunately, the fluctuating global commodity prices can wreak havoc on national budgets, making economic planning difficult. More so, protectionist policies in developed nations can make it harder for African countries to export processed goods with higher profit margins. For instance, a sudden drop in the price of copper, a major export for many African countries, can lead to significant budget shortfalls, impacting social programs and infrastructure development. Now, what could be worse than this? You guessed right, brain drain. It is no news that Africa faces a significant brain drain phenomenon. Talented individuals in Africa often seek better educational and employment opportunities abroad, depriving their home countries of skilled professionals crucial for development. Interestingly, the United Nations estimates that Africa loses an average of $2 billion per year due to skilled migration. This massive exodus of talent weakens the knowledge base needed to drive innovation, entrepreneurship, and economic diversification, leading to a weak economy. Africa's geography also plays a role in its economic struggles. For example, a large area of the continent, particularly the Sahara Desert region, are arid or semi-arid, thereby limiting agricultural productivity. In fact, the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations estimates that only about 6% of Africa's land is suitable for high-potential agriculture. Also, access to natural resources is unevenly distributed, with some regions rich in minerals while others lack basic resources. Worse still, historical isolation due to the geographical barriers like the Sahara Desert hindered trade and knowledge exchange, which have played a significant role in the development of other regions. So what can be done to banish poverty from Africa? The good thing is, the research conducted by economists at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, didn't only identify the problems, but also provided potential solutions. Central to their findings is the emphasis on the paramount importance of institutions over geographical determinants in explaining economic disparities across nations. The role of stable institutions in fostering economic development is very critical, and recently studies have indicated that countries with strong institutions experience higher levels of economic growth and prosperity. In fact, research suggests that improvements in institutional quality can lead to significant increases in GDP per capita. For instance, a study published by the World Bank found that a 1-unit increase in institutional quality, as measured by the worldwide governance indicators, is associated with a 2.5% increase in GDP per capita. Also, Daron Acemoglu and James A. Robinson, who are prominent economists at MIT, have challenged the long-held assumption that Africa's geographical limitations are the primary culprit behind its economic struggles. Their research, particularly the book Why Nations Fail, suggests that strong institutions, that is, the formal and informal rules that govern a society, play a far more critical role. Stable institutions create an environment where individuals and businesses can invest, innovate, and thrive. On the other hand, weak institutions lead to corruption, inefficient resource allocation, and ultimately, stunted economic growth. Furthermore, MIT economists argue that while geographical factors such as land fertility and access to resources do exert influence, they do not essentially determine a nation's economic fate. Instead, it is the quality of institutions, that is, encompassing governance structures, legal frameworks, property rights, and regulatory systems that ultimately determines economic outcomes. Countries with stronger institutions tend to have higher GDP per capita and lower poverty rates. For instance, Botswana, which consistently ranks high on governance indicators in Africa, boasts a GDP per capita of over $18,000, which is significantly higher than the sub-Saharan African average of around $1,700. What makes Botswana different from the rest of Africa, and how is it prospering? Despite being a landlocked nation with limited arable land, Botswana has transformed itself into one of the fastest growing economies in the world over the past few decades. Interestingly, this success story can be attributed to its focus on building strong institutions. Botswana has a relatively stable government with a good commitment to transparency and good governance. And unlike other African nations, the country scores above the 70th percentile in control of corruption according to Transparency International's 2023 Corruption Perception Index. This has attracted foreign investment of over $7 billion annually in recent years and fostered a business-friendly environment. This has also resulted in an impressive poverty reduction rate, with the percentage of the population living below the national poverty line dropping from over 50% in the 1970s to around 18% today. So, drawing on the insights from the MIT economist research and Botswana's success story, several potential solutions can be identified to address Africa's economical challenges. Investing in education and infrastructure. A skilled workforce of over 1.3 billion people would be a powerful resource for Africa. This is why increased investment in primary, secondary, and vocational education, with a focus on science, technology, engineering, and math fields, is necessary, as it will equip Africans with the skills and knowledge needed to compete in the global marketplace. Interestingly, the World Bank estimates that a 1% increase in education spending can lead to a 0.3% increase in GDP growth, showing how much the continent can gain from this focus. As discussed earlier, Africa's infrastructure deficit is a major bottleneck to economic growth. Worse still, it has been estimated that the annual infrastructure financing gap in Africa is around $100 billion, showing how bad the situation is. Yet, investing in roads, bridges, power grids, and communication networks will improve connectivity by 50%, reduce production costs, and unlock new economic opportunities, particularly in rural areas. Another potential solution is democratic governance. This is because promoting democratic governance, transparency, and accountability is essential for building trust in institutions and ensuring inclusive development. Democratic institutions provide mechanisms for citizen participation, accountability, and peaceful political transitions, fostering stability and resilience. Also, research has shown that democratic governance is positively correlated with economic growth and development outcomes, showing its importance in the African context. After all that's been said, what does the future hold for Africa in terms of economic prosperity? The truth is, the road to economic prosperity for Africa will not be without its bumps and roadblocks. High global interest rates, currently hovering around a 20-year high according to the Federal Reserve, can make it more expensive for African nations to borrow funds for crucial infrastructure development projects. Also, ongoing political conflicts and regional instability, like the recent tensions in the Democratic Republic of Congo, can further deter investment. A cautious investor climate, fueled by lingering concerns about corruption and political volatility, can also hinder progress. But despite these challenges, there are still reasons for optimism regarding Africa's economic future. Historical examples offer valuable lessons. Many developed nations in Asia and the West faced similar hurdles in the past. In fact, just a few decades ago, parts of Asia, like South Korea, grappled with widespread poverty, limited infrastructure, and a GDP per capita of just $100 in the 1960s. Through a combination of factors, including investments in education, infrastructure development, and good governance, these nations achieved remarkable economic transformations. Africa has the potential to follow a similar trajectory. The story of Africa's economic development is still being written. By acknowledging the challenges, learning from past successes of nations like South Korea, and implementing well-defined solutions that address issues like corruption and political instability, African nations can unlock their true potential. What do you think about the economic situation in Africa? Do let us know in the comments. Also, do like this video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't. Where money matters, we'll see you on the next one.